Let's talk about CSS. I would like to introduce something very important called specificity, which is a weird word that some people struggle to pronounce, right? Historically speaking, that has been one of my favorite questions when I had to interview someone, specificity. Yeah? But before talking about what specificity is, what that means, how to deal with it, blah, 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 let me present you the problem. So in here, I got a React application, which is completely empty. As you can see, there is nothing on it because I just deleted everything. And I would like to create one div, hello. Yeah? Something very simplistic. And now, back to my CSS. Oh, sorry. You see, I got the div like that. And I want to change the background color to yellow. So what will be the background color of my hello message? Yellow. Fantastic. It's very small, but I hope you agree it's yellow, right? Cool, no problem at all. Easy peasy, free sugar. But now imagine that I copy that, and now the background color is green. So which one applies? Green or yellow, and why? Yellow. So someone, Steffi said the last one. John, you said yellow?
Yellow.
No? Yellow? So Joshua, why you think is yellow? You think it's the first one?
Yeah, because then it's just going to ignore.
So there are two alternatives, right? Either it ignores everything but the first one, or the other way around. It overrides properties as soon as you redefine them. Yeah? So let's see which one wins. It's green. Yeah? So in other words, if you have multiple properties, multiple CSS properties affecting the same element, the last one wins. Yeah? That's important. That's the first thing. Sometimes, because, I mean, this is pretty obvious, right? That's pretty obvious because you got one after the other, but that could be more complicated, right? Imagine that I got a big CSS, and I'm doing that, hey, yellow, but it's green, what the hell? And then you need to realize that at the bottom of the file, could even be in a different file. So sometimes it's not that obvious to spot, right? Something I recommend you to do, if you think the background color should be yellow, but that's still green, is to open DevTools. I'll show you. Right-click, inspect, as we showed yesterday, and then look at how sexy this is. So I select my div with a hello, here you go. And then let me zoom that a bit. Can you see that? So Chrome is tracking both properties. Yeah? However, look at what happened with the yellow. It's a strike through. You see? That means it doesn't apply. That's the way the browser is telling you, hey, yeah, okay, fair enough. You tried to set the background color to yellow, but in reality, that didn't work because something else is changing that property. Can anyone tell me what will happen if I disable, if I click on that checkbox? What will be the background color? Yellow, correct. You see? So if I temporarily disable that rule, then the other one wins because it's the only one. And what happens if I disable that one as well? What will be the background color? White. Yeah, correct, because no one is actually defining the background color of our title. That makes sense, right? So that's the very first rule about the specificity, is how specific a rule is. Yeah? But obviously that can get much more complicated. Yeah.
See this example.
Yeah.
If you were struggling to find where it was, for example, why don't you just add another line of code that says change it back to yellow?
Why don't you add a new line to do what? Sorry.
So if you go back to the other screen,
Yeah.
you had yellow,
Yeah.
and somewhere down you had green.
Green,
So
yeah.
let's just say you couldn't find where that green was. Why don't you just go down further and then put yellow?
That's a good question. In that particular case, right, I can do no. I'm the boss here, so I'll leave it afterwards, right? And then you win. Essentially, look, if I refresh, you got the jackpot. But in reality, that could be way more complicated because we may have multiple files. Yeah? In that case, we have two resources fighting for the same thing in the same file. But you may have multiple CSS files. And depending on how soon they are rendered, it will win one or the other. So this may not be that easy to debug. And also, if you find that to me, that doesn't make sense. First of all, we have a human discussion. Hey, what's the background color of our app? Is green or yellow? Let's decide that. And once we agree on the color, then let's remove the other one, right? There's no point of having two colors if one of them is not going to work, right? So let's tidy up. One of the most challenging aspects of modern CSS is to scale it in an appropriate manner. Yeah? At some point, we'll become very successful JavaScript developers and we'll be able to scale, to modularize, to componentize, blah, 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 blah. But when talking about CSS, unfortunately, it's sometimes a bit difficult. When you have thousands of lines of CSS, it's difficult to orchestrate it. Yeah? In that respect, even though that's a bit beyond the scope of this session, let me recommend you an online book, which is free. It's called SMACS CSS, Scalable and Modular Architecture for CSS. This is one of my favorite books because this is simply, it's a very short book, it's maybe 30 pages or 40 pages, something like that. It's online, you can get it for free. You can download the PDF. The reason why I like it is because someone with a lot of experience in CSS is proposing a way to create powerful CSS architectures. Yeah? It's very personal. And he states that at the beginning, like, hey, I understand if you disagree with some of my points, and actually I do disagree with some of his points, but I really appreciate how experienced this guy is and how clever he is proposing different ways of orchestrating your CSS. Anyway, let's go back to the basics. So imagine that our background color is yellow, yeah? So we understood that last one wins, we have only one, so yellow wins. But let's make the exercise a bit more complicated. What happens if I add a class name? Yeah, so I have my hello component, but with a class name test. What happens if I do that? What will be the color?
Blue.
Why blue?
Because it's going to override it. Because it's, well, first off, it's further down the sheet. Second off, it addresses that class directly.
Okay, so I think there is a common understanding that the color will be blue. First of all, ignoring any other reason, because it's the last color that we declare, right? Let's have a look. Yeah, it's blue. Fantastic. But now, let's make it a bit more difficult. What happens if I move the class name reference to the top? Blue or yellow? Still blue. Ooh, interesting. In the previous example, the last one wins, right? Why in this example the first one wins? That's the right word. That's the right word. Class is more specific. See? Specificity. Class is more specific. Yeah? Let's have a look. That's correct. Background is blue. So in this particular case, it doesn't really matter the order. The important thing is how specific each selector is. Class is more specific than the tag selector. That's why it wins in this particular bloody battle. Yeah? And once again, you can check on your DevTools. You can see the top test. Blue, it wins because the div is strike through. And when we're talking about how specific one selector is, this is based on what? What's the algorithm? Is there any algorithm? Is there any way to calculate the specificity of a selector? Specificity is a number. Yeah? It's a number. So when someone asks you what the specificity is, it's a number. That's the first thing. The majority of the developers start talking, the specificity is the way, is blah, 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 blah. Long speech. No. Specificity is a number. If that's the first thing you said, you are providing a convincing speech. If you start messing around with vague and buzzwords, you may understand it, but you are unable to explain it. Specificity is a number. All right, so let's talk about numbers. So does anyone know the weight of the tag selector and the specificity? What's the number associated to a tag selector? 1, that's correct. Good one here. Sorry, let me change that. Like that. Does anyone know the weight of the class selector? Two, wrong. It's 10. The higher number wins. Because 10 is bigger than 1, 10 wins. Does it mean that the class selector will always win? Not really, not really, not really. That could get a bit more complicated because of several reasons. Remember that in CSS we can chain multiple selectors. In other words, we can have a div, and inside of the div we can have another div, yeah, and inside of the div we can have another div. Not sure if you get my point. So we can have a hierarchical structure. This is how every website works, right? We always have a hierarchy of divs. And inside of that div, we can have another div, blah, 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 blah. Why I'm saying that? Because essentially, we can do that. Div, 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 div. This is not going to work. I'm not going to create 20 divs. But imagine that we do that. That's still okay in CSS. Can anyone tell me the specificity of that selector? It's 11, that's correct. 1 plus 1 plus 1, blah, blah. We got 11 divs here, so the specificity is 11. So what will be the eventual background color? Yellow or blue?
Yellow.
Yellow, that's correct. That's correct, yeah? So be careful with that. Specificity is a number, but we can combine multiple selectors, so we can add all these things, right? And actually, without going that crazy, we can have something like that. Look, we have a div, and inside of the div we have a label. Yep. So let's display hello again. Let me redo the CSS a bit. So if the div has background color yellow and the label has background color green, we can display both side by side, well, more or less. So what will be the background color? Why green?
Because it's on top of the stack.
Yes, green is more specific. You see, we are nesting elements, and even though here the background color will be yellow, if we drill down, the label is more specific. Oops, sorry. Let's have a look. You see? Look at what happened here. The label is only that bit on the left. It's green. But the div, the parent element that fits all the available width, that's the way the div works, it's green. It's yellow, sorry. Yeah? So that's a way to combine it. But can we do that? Yes. That's valid. And nothing will actually change. The only thing that will change is the specificity. Can you tell me the specificity of the first div? It's 1, correct? What's the specificity of the label? It's 1 again, that's correct, because we have only one selector, yeah? That one applies on the label, that one applies on the div. But if I do that, div label, what's now the specificity of the label, of that selector? It's 2, that's correct, guys, that's correct. It's 1 plus 1, yeah? And if I add the class name to the label, oops, sorry. Class name test. So if I now, on top of everything else, I type .test, background color blue, oops. Which one wins? It's blue. Why? Because the test has a specificity, how much? 10, that's correct, yeah? So again, if you have a class name, it's likely to win, but that's not rocket science, yeah? Because if you nest multiple selectors, eventually 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, you can make it, yeah? So be careful with that. Any questions so far? No? Okay, so we got tag selectors, specificity 1. We got classes, specificity 10. Let's think about other type of selectors, because we got many in CSS. And I know you are thinking about a few of them already. Let me show you one. An attribute. Attributes are very important in React. So an attribute is something like that. Hello equals world. You will see, as soon as you start doing React training, this is what we call props. So we can pass props to different components. We'll learn that, don't worry about that. But that's a valid HTML structure. And because that's a valid HTML structure, we can do that. Div background color blue. And now, to refer to the attribute, we can do that with the square brackets. Yeah, with the square brackets, we can refer to an attribute with key hello and with value world. And now we can change the background color. Which one wins this time? The tag or the attribute? The attribute. Right. What's the specificity of the tag? Again. 1. What's the specificity of the attribute? 5? No, it's 10. Same as the class name. Yeah? So they have the same strength, the same power. Yeah? This makes sense? So, what happens if we have both a class and an attribute? I like that. Class name test. So look, we have an attribute and then we have a class test. Background color pink. Which one wins? Pink.
Yes, because it's last.
Correct, because it's last. And if we change the order? Correct. Yeah? So classes and attributes, they have the same strength. Can you tell me any other type of selector in CSS? Fantastic. I love it. IDs. Yeah? An ID, well, first of all, IDs were very important in the 90s. In modern coding, they don't play really well because they go against the principle of componentization, right? So an ID is something unique, something you cannot reuse. And modern web is about reusing things. But anyway, technically speaking, you can still use them. ID equals Brexit. Something unique for sure. Right, so how do you refer to the ID on the CSS? Hashtag, fantastic. Hashtag Brexit. And then the background color, of course, is going to be red. So what's the specificity of the ID selector, guys? It's not 10?
More than 10, I think.
Say again?
More than 10.
Okay, more than 10, fantastic. An ID is more specific, an ID is something unique, right? So it's more specific. Look at the trend. Tag selector, 1. Class and attribute selector, 10.
20?
Wrong. 100, fantastic, fantastic. So an ID has 100 strength, yeah? And obviously that means that even if you leave it on top, it will win. It's likely to win, as you can see. Yeah? Again, technically speaking, can we nest 200 div elements? If your HTML is complex enough, maybe you have 200 nested elements. Let's do something. Let's go to Google. Amazon. I really like Amazon for these things, actually. Let me open the tools. You can always find very interesting things on Amazon HTML. And I want to see if they have 100. I'm not going to do all that until the end, but just to see how complex the DOM structure is. All right, so I got the HTML, and then I got the body. We got one div. That's complicated to navigate. Two divs. That's only the header. 3 divs. 4 levels. Tag. Well, I don't know, but definitely this is a very complex website, right? So if you have a bit of time, well, I'm sure you can spend it doing better things, right? And anyway, I hope you get the point that technically speaking, your DOM could be a bit complicated. So that means that a bunch of nested tags, or of course class name, can defeat an ID. Yeah? But that's unlikely to happen. Does anyone know any other way of declaring CSS styles? Inline. Ooh, that's very controversial, but I like it.
Right inside this, inside
The HTML.
yes, inside the flux. Yes.
Correct? That means inline, right? So in HTML, you can do that. Look. And be careful, because first of all, I'm going to show you how to do it in HTML, and then I'm going to show you how to do it in React. It's not the same way. It's not the same way. It's very similar, but that's not the same way. In HTML, you can do that. Style equals background color cerulean. You know that. Yep. So you can define very specific styles directly on the HTML. Will that work? I'm not 100% sure if that is valid on React. No, you see it's throwing. No, that's not correct. Yeah. So, but in HTML that's valid. In React, you need to do something slightly different. You need to pass an object, and then background color, or if you want with quotes, you can type exact property with hyphens. Actually, I'm not sure if cerulean is a valid color. No, it's not. Only refresh. Oh, my browser died. In a second. All right. So you see, when you do something wrong, one of the good things about React, it tells you the problem. Unsupported style property background dash color. Did you mean background color? Right. So you see the first style. Does anyone know the name of the case we are using here? Background dash color.
Kebab case.
That's kebab case, correct? Yeah, kebab case, because it imitates the blade of the kebab going through the meat. Also in classic programming, this is called Lisp case, because Lisp, a very old programming language, also use it. But this is not very JavaScript friendly. What JavaScript likes is to do that. You see the capital C, background color with big C. What's the name of this case? Camel case, fantastic. So React is inviting us to do that, to use camel case instead of kebab case. Will it work this time? No, it doesn't work because cerulean is not a valid color in HTML. Lime, I love this one. Lime, I think is valid. Lime, here you go. You got the lime color, yeah? So the inline styling selector is even more specific than the ID, more specific. But how much? What number do we assign to the inline selector, guys? Wrong. Again, look at the trend, guys. Look at the scale. 1,000, fantastic. 1, then 10, then 100, then 1,000. Yeah? Yeah, correct. So this is 1,000. That wins. If you do that, it doesn't really matter what you do on the right-hand side. That wins. Unless you nest 1,001 divs, in which case you have bigger problems in life. Right, so you go.
Sorry, what's 1,000?
Is the inline styling.
Style.
Yeah, inline one. And now I got a question for you. Two questions I've been asking for many years to our candidates. The first one is for juniors, the second one is for seniors, but you can start thinking about it. The junior question. Imagine that you go to a job interview and they present you this code on the left-hand side, yeah? And they ask your opinion. Yeah? What do you think about that code? What do you think, to be more precise, about inline styles? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And why?
Bad thing.
Why bad thing, Steffi?
I think it's because it's messy, and I think that you have like different like CSS part, and then HTML is going to be more clear to find things, and yes, otherwise it's going to be like, oh, I put this in CSS, or I put this one inside of HTML. It looks really messy actually for me. I don't know.
What do you think? Do you agree with Steffi?
Yeah, when the one is bigger, then it's very difficult to debug.
Hmm?
Also, if you're prototyping and it's your client site and say, well, change it to this, there and then change it, but in long term, you don't want to do that.
Cool. Yeah, I agree with you all, guys. That's messy, and we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't do that. Yeah. Also, don't forget that CSS classes can be reused. Yeah. If you go to codedy.com, you'll see that I used a lot some colors pattern, right? That blue color is all around the website, around the web app, right? I'm not redefining the same color again and again and again. I have a class called, I don't know, highlight or special or primary or something like that, and I reuse the class all around the web app, right? So yeah, that's not a good practice, right? It's a question for beginner, for junior. If you said, yeah, I love it, I'm a big fan of inline styles, you don't get the job. However, if you apply for a more specific role, my next question will be, can you imagine any scenario where using inline styles could be acceptable? That's not obvious. I like to present you not one but two scenarios where we may want to do that. The first scenario is about dynamic CSS. In other words, in CSS, you can set static properties. I want the width of my box to be 100 pixels. I want the position of my box to be here or there, static. But what happens if you have, like here, a tooltip? One tooltip here, one tooltip there. The positioning is different depending on where my cursor is on the screen. Yeah? You cannot do that with CSS directly. What happens if I have another button here? The position of my tooltip will change. So I need to define a dynamic mechanism to decide where to display my tooltip. For these kind of cases, we need to deal with a combination of CSS and JavaScript. So that could be convenient, because I can do something like that, top, and then I can create a JavaScript function, get top position, depending on where my mouse is, I can gather where do I want to display that element. Yeah? So that's one scenario. The other one is about performance. It has been studied that inline styles are slightly more performant than external CSS styles. Yeah? Slightly more performant. But even in that case, even if such a level of performance improvement is important for your company, for your product, you never do that. You never code inline. What you do is you code like on the right-hand side, and then before you commit and you push, you run a process on the command line. You will see that on task number 17, actually. You will run a process that it will translate the CSS on the right to the CSS on the left. Yeah. So in other words, if you imagine that, I don't know which is the most specific one, the ID, of course, right? That's the most specific. Ignoring that one, if we don't have that one, red wins. Do you agree on that? Yeah, that's the ID. So what that process will do is, all right, I have a CSS, the background color is red, so I will come here and I will say background color red. And it will have the same impact. At development time, we have the flexibility of dealing with CSS, and at runtime, we have the performance of running the styles inline. But again, this is a very exotic scenario. Companies like Amazon, they do that. But why? Because they have millions of customers every day. So applying that change, they may save a lot of money, yeah, in server infrastructure, DevOps, cloud, and stuff like that. So that's a very exotic case, but hey, still there. Cool. Any questions? So we got the tag, we got class, we got attribute, we got ID. We got style, so we got 5 types of selectors already. Is there anything else above all?
I don't know if it's a selector, but you can do the exclamation mark important,
Ooh.
which I heard is super bad practice. But
Ooh. So now come open the Pandora box. So there is something else. Imagine that, right, let me simplify that a bit. Imagine that on the very first day we join a company, so we create a piece of software and we do that. Our background color is blue, right? But essentially we start hiring developers, they start changing things, you go on holidays to Chernobyl, and once you come back, you realize like your background color is not blue anymore. You go to GitHub and they say, hey, wait a minute, someone changed the background color to green, to pink, and hey, wait a minute, someone changed it to green, and someone changed it to red, and someone changed it to lime. What the hell is going on? That's unacceptable, and I don't really want to understand what's going on. I want to win this battle. So there is a way to kill everything. Correct. It's adding the /important. If you do that, game over. Yeah? So now, back to the website. Background color is blue. Yeah? What's the specificity associated to the important suffix, guys?
for infinity.
No, wrong. Again, look, 10,000. That was expected, right? 1, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000. Yeah? Still, I said game over, but technically speaking, you can nest 10,001 divs. Does it make sense? Yeah? This is what we call the Evo 2004 moment. Have you watched that? Have you played Street Fighter? So the best 2 Street Fighter players in the world. No, that's not the one, sorry. I don't care about the first round, I just want to see the last one. Yeah, it's that one. Right, so Ken on the left hand side, the guy in white, he's the div selector. And Chun-Li on the right hand side, she's a /important selector, right? So don't underestimate div selectors, right? That was a weird analogy, probably the weirdest one I've done in my life. Anyway, so that's the way specificity works. Remember, specificity is a number. It's nothing else, nothing more. How do we calculate it? You got that algorithm, yeah? That is obviously deterministic. Again, back to this /important. What do you think about it? Good, bad? About this /important, the more specific. It's a good thing. Okay, right, it's a good thing, fantastic. So the founder of the company did that, and I joined the company second, and I did the class. Then I said, no. The background should be pink, no problem at all. And now the background is pink. And then the third employee said, no. Background is green. You get the point, right? We start adding a lot of hacks of /important. And then the founder, it's game over for him, right? He cannot do anything. So that's an anti-pattern. It's a very easy way. When I have to evaluate the quality of a product, probably the easiest way from a styling point of view is to go to the Visual Studio and search how many times they are referring to /important. The more they refer to it, the worse, because important means you've been unable to orchestrate your CSS in an appropriate way. So don't use it. That's a bad pattern. However, once again, is there any scenario where it could be acceptable to use /important? I will show you one scenario It's a bit deep, right? It's beyond the scope of this session. But there is one case where I do use slash important. And again, I like to show you the same tooltip example, right? You see the tooltip is blue, cerulean, 00AEFF color. So I didn't create that component. So this is an external component that someone created on GitHub and blah, blah, blah. And the problem is that tooltip by default I think is orange color. But obviously orange color doesn't play well in our styling. Yeah? It's a bit weird. So I wanted to repaint it into blue. So then what I did is, okay, I went to the documentation and I realized that the component, and actually we can do it here. So the component had a class name called class name equal tooltip. I just made that up, right? That's an example. And I say, all right, because I want the tooltip to be blue instead of orange, I'll go to my CSS and I'll do the tooltip background color blue or cerulean. But then, surprisingly enough, back to the web app, the tooltip was still orange. And then I said, all right, I need to increase the specificity. So then I check, and then I realized that the element also had an ID called, I don't know, tooltip. It had an ID. And then I say, all right, so let's use the ID, because the ID is more specific. We'll see if I can win this battle. Didn't work, yeah? So essentially, the guy who created the tooltip, he did something very weird. I don't know if he did like inline styling, so the specificity of his selector was huge. And because that's an external plugin, I cannot modify his CSS. I don't have access. So the only way I managed to win that battle is by adding slash important. But that's a very special case, because I don't have access to that CSS. That's an external component, yeah? It's minified. It's something you shouldn't touch at all. That's the exception. Right, any questions? No? So I'd like to show you, just to finish this workshop, a joke. So you know that movie, I don't even know how this is in English. The Signing maybe? Yeah. The Signing. So yes, The Signing, CSS Specificity. Yeah, maybe, yes. So there is a very nice joke. Let's see if we can open it in a higher resolution. Am I the only person that finds weird finding an image on Google, clicking on the website, and then the image is nowhere? No, it happened, right? Yeah. I'm not the only one. All right. So anyway, you can search that by yourself. But even though it's very hard to read anything, I love it because it explains the movie based on specificity principles, right? Who wins each situation depending on how specific the selectors are. Yeah, again, I cannot show you the image at an appropriate. Oh yeah, it looks a bit better, right? So talks about classes, about elements, about many even things we haven't talked about that are a bit special. You see inline, and then slash important. It's like the most relevant one, right? Cool. Anything else, guys? Anything else, Damiano, Sara? No, I'll take that as a no. So.